Geek Insider presents Geeky, Cheeky, and Downright Freaky with Matthew Harris. He's taking a closer look at some of the wonderfully weird, gloriously geeky, and freaky things in our world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Geeky, Cheeky, and Downright Freaky. I'm your host, Matthew Harris, as the little intro there says. And tonight, folks, I know I've discussed the Mandela effect quite a bit lately, and that's because it's one of the more freaky things that I know about, and I actually know quite a bit about a lot of the different effects that happen or that have been reported. And this one actually that I'm going to cover tonight is one that I've done the most investigating that really I've ever done for any article, let alone the Mandela effect. I first heard about the Mandela effect about 3 years ago, fell down that rabbit hole. And this one tonight is one of the first ones that just made me do a double take and start thinking that something was deeper going on. And I'm talking about, of course, Ed McMahon and Publishers Clearinghouse. Now, if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, and into the early 90s, you may remember Ed McMahon being on television as a spokesperson for Publishers Clearinghouse. Many of us spent countless hours in front of the television back then, and before cable enhanced our lives, we had a whopping 3 or 4 channels to choose from, tops. And corporations, organizations, advertisers, then and now, utilize spokesmen to hawk their wares, to spread their reach and increase their branding, often subjecting us to the same commercials over and over and over. And a few of these more memorable ones were like Mr. Whipple with Charmin telling us not to squeeze the Charmin. Then we had Billy Mays, who was always yelling at us about OxyClean. Oops, wrong OxyClean. I mean OxyClean with an I. That's another Mandela effect, by the way. And then there was old Madge, who was telling everybody that, unsuspecting shoppers, that they were soaking in it. And so those were, a few of the spokespeople that we were subjected to for a good portion of our young lives. And of course, like I said, many of us also recall Ed McMahon not only appearing daily during our television time, but also on mailings that had him embossed on the envelope with a big old smile like that. And, that was in an attempt to call our parents' attention to the latest Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. And the commercials would generally include footage from the previous year's winners. And from what so many of us remember, Ed and the prize patrol would be there to present them with an oversized check. Well, folks, it never happened. Ed McMahon never worked for Publishers Clearinghouse. He was actually the spokesman for a direct competitor called American Family Publishers. All right, fair enough. I could concede the fact that thousands of us conflated the two companies, yet completely forgot about this AFP in the process. And that could be that because PCH ended up being the only one left. But according to Forbes and any research you attempt to do on your own, Ed never left the studio to ambush families, and he never held a giant check at winners' homes. That's right. Apparently, Ed not only worked for a completely different company, he never accompanied the prize patrol to hand out those big old checks, not once. Now, this is where the whole confabulation theory and slant totally loses air for me. Because when you look at it, thousands of people from across the country, from all walks of life, and ranging the entire spectrum of ethnicity and religious upbringings, they remember 3 things very clearly: that Ed worked for Publishers Clearinghouse, that Ed arrived with the prize patrol and surprised winners with a knock on the door, and he presented them with oversized checks. Now, throughout the show tonight, you're going to see that even Ed seemed to recall these exact same events that never happened. Now, as I always tell you guys, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you're going to miss a good portion of the material that goes along with this, because I do use videos and pictures a lot, and this week is going to have a lot of them. In fact, tonight's show is going to be longer than 30 minutes, I guarantee you, because I've done that much research and I have that much material on this subject. Now, this video may get taken down. It shouldn't, but I've had problems here lately with just the oddballest things getting dinged. And none of this material that I'm showing you guys tonight is new. It's stuff you can find on other Mandela Effect websites, mostly. A lot of it I found on my own, but I imagine that it's on those sites now, as well as YouTube videos. And that's what's funny, is that a lot of these videos can get away with showing certain things, but then when I show them, I get Mickey Mouse yelling at me or somebody else telling me to take stuff down. But when as I was saying earlier, when I fell down the rabbit hole of the Mandela Effect, this was one of the first ones that really grabbed my attention. I had specific memories of Ed and the Prize Patrol, and about a year after discovering it, I did start a deeper dive. And now I've spent well over 2 years looking at this particular Mandela Effect, and I found a ton of cool stuff on it. And first, let's get this straight. American Family Publishers was paying an untold sum year after year to a generally well-known celebrity that was almost constantly thought to be working for their direct competitor. Okay, I can understand Publishers Clearinghouse not doing anything to correct the misconception, but what the hell could American Family Publishers been thinking? They continued the same ineffective and detrimental campaign for over 15 years. Ed was their spokesman from 82 to 98. Why aren't they at the top of every, worst advertising list and video that you see out there? That just had to be one of the worst ones ever. And now, if that was all there was to this particular Mandela Effect, I would be willing to concede to the fact that this perpetuation of the misconception is the sole culprit for all of us remembering McMahon working for Publishers Clearinghouse. It's an easy enough mistake to make. But what about the whole arriving with a prize patrol, knocking on winners' doors and handing them the giant checks? Where did that false memory come from? So, remembering that Ed never personally awarded the winners, check out this early American Family Publishers commercial from 1984.
Here's the secret, folks, of where to win the biggest sweepstakes prize of all time.
American Family, join us!
Tim Blakely and Rebecca Wright won millions of dollars. Now you can win $10 million, only from American Family. No other sweepstakes with a prize this big. I will personally award this giant cash fortune. Be sure to enter the sweepstakes with my picture.
Join us!
Millions and millions of dollars, all for you.
Okay, so apparently even Ed wasn't so clear on his duties as spokesman, because he just told viewers that he's going to personally award this giant cash fortune to the winner. Then a couple of years later, in another AFP commercial, they actually make a small attempt to clarify which company Ed works for. But their favorite pitchman once again says that he personally awarded $10 million to the last winner. Check it out.
Help you?
Fill her up.
I know you. You on TV?
Sometimes.
Sure. You won millions of dollars from that,
No, American Family Publishers.
Oh, yeah, the one with Ed McMahon.
That's right. I personally awarded David $10 million. Watch for the sweepstakes with my picture. You may be next. $10 million, all yours. Enter before January 29th.
All right. So, once again, Ed's saying he's going to personally award the winner, but he never left the studio, according to the real history of Ed McMahon. But, there's a lot more to this, folks. this next one, it's not Ed with the Prize Patrol, but it kind of blows a small hole in the Forbes article and Popular Skeptic forums, because Ed's on the Richard Simmons show in the 90s. And, well, let's watch the
Now, Irene, you entered the American Family Publisher Sweepstake, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Now, why? What made you send in that entry?
I figured somebody has to win. Why not me?
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right, because you followed your dream, Irene, look what I have for you. You'll be walking away today with a check for $25,000.
Okay, so he handed her a big check, and the check clearly says American Family Publishers, which this will be important on some other examples later. But so there he was out of the studio, he was handing her a giant check. And there's actually other instances of this, I do believe, are in that same episode. And folks, you can find links to all of these in my Ed McMahon article on Geek Insider. It's from last year. A lot of these are linked right in. And again, if you're listening on the podcast, make sure you check us out at geekinsider.com, and you can just type in Mandela Effect, and there's a bunch of stuff from me, yours truly. But you can also check us out on our YouTube channel. Just type in Geek Insider, and then, of course, our Facebook. Because the reason I say all this is because, like I've said earlier, I show a lot of videos and images on this show, and while you can still get a good understanding of what's going on if you're just listening on the podcast, I think you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of it if you join us on YouTube. And so anyway, oversized check, Ed presenting it, yet there's not a single commercial showing Ed or any other celebrity of the time surprising winners with giant checks at their home. So why would anybody freak out like this?
Mrs. Abruzzo, I'm here with the Neighborhood Watch.
Yes!
Yeah. Oh, no. I'm signing up people for the Neighborhood Watch.
You've made our dreams come true. You have your cameras here? Where are you going, Mr. McMahon?
I'm going to check with the lady next door. Yeah,
are you going to get the check?
Start a Neighborhood Watch. It's just one of the many ways you can help make America stronger. To find out how, call or log on for this free guide.
Now, I do understand that later in life, and even early in life, Ed needed to make money. And spokespeople, they'll often take any kind of job that they can get a hold of to pay the bills. And it's well known that Ed did have money problems, especially later in his life. He had some tax issues. And there's another thing we'll discuss about that here in a little bit. But, one of the biggest roles that Ed is known for is as a sidekick for Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. And in this video from 1991 that I'm about to show, Johnny appears on Late Night with David Letterman. And in an obvious jest, Johnny claims that Ed couldn't be there, but that David, well, let's just watch the clip real quick.
Our next guest is one of the members of the cast of the television program over there.
I have to apologize. I thought this was the Joe Franklin studio. I'll tell you why I'm here. I happen to be in town over doing some stuff for the NBC affiliate.
That's right.
And, Ed McMahon, our good friend, could not be here. Yeah. But it seems, David, that you are the $1 million winner.
Oh, my God! I've won $1 million.
I don't know if you caught that, folks, but that check at the top of it, it clearly says freaking Publishers Clearinghouse. Now, sure, Ed's good friend and Letterman's prop department could have dropped the ball here, but Ed had been working for American Family Publishers for 9 years by this time. If it was such a common mistake, why in the world wouldn't Johnny catch it? Surely Ed had discussed this problem with the advertising campaign for almost a decade. And we've got something really cool coming up next, but Meredith is punching me from the background with, it looks like the character from Scream, and she is telling me it's break time. So hold tight, folks. We'll be right back with a lot more about Ed McMahon, Publishers Clearinghouse, and the Mandela Effect. And there is a lot more. Stay tuned.
We'll be back right after this.
Check it out. MobileEdge.com has award-winning products with innovative features and contemporary, edgy designs that empower you to look sharp and travel smart with your mobile tech. Your beloved, not to mention expensive gaming gear and mobile tech devices are an extension of you, so give them the protection and style they deserve wherever you go. Find them at MobileEdge.com and protect your tech with Mobile Edge. Bring it on. Hey Geek Insiders, Mobile Edge has a special coupon code for our dedicated listeners. Get 25% off your Mobile Edge gear using coupon code GEEK25. That's GEEK25. Geek out.
All right. And hey, folks, just a quick little insider information from Geek Insider. Next week, we're starting a contest for a cool little gadget from Mobile Edge. It is a portable battery pack that can play your games, your laptop. It's very cool. Watch for details on Geek Insider this next week. Anyway, so back to Ed McMahon. Now, this next part is a little out of chronological order, so to speak, but I wanted to jump in here because there's not only this funny commercial, but, well, let's play it and then we'll talk some more about it. Hang on just a second. I got to scroll back to where it is. Here we go. Watch.
Shout out to my people. This is Ed McMahon, rolling slow through the suburbs in an unmarked van. I ran the strip in the 80s, brought big fat checks to the ladies. When I showed up at their door, they would start screaming like crazy. Raked it in hand over fist, was on the VIP list. I was a verbal gunslinger, and my shots never missed. But now the bills have come due, and my credit score's whacked. So I'm hitting up the winners to get my checks back. Hi, Ed McMahon. Ed McMahon. Remember, I gave you that big check. I'd like to have that check back. I'm having some stuff would help a lot. Just a little bit.
All right, see what I mean? Now, not only does he rap and include lines where he says he brought big fat checks to the ladies, and that when he showed up at the door, they'd start screaming like crazy. At about the 36-second mark, you'll notice there where he started knocking on people's door. And what did he ask them? He said, remember, I gave you that big check. I'd like to have that check back. Again, I understand Ed's having some trouble, money problems, but why would he go along without at least correcting the mistake? He wasn't a part of the prize patrol. He never handed out big checks. Now, interestingly enough, years later, when Ed was interviewed by CNN, this is in 2008, he was interviewed about this specific commercial. And this is kind of flabbergasting because this is a year before his death. And he said, you can even read the entire transcript on CNN yourself. And again, the link is on Geek Insider on my Ed McMahon Mandela article from last year. But I wanted to share with you the relevant part of the discussion, because the interviewer's name is Hammer. And so he says, well, the premise of the freecreditreport.com commercials are hilarious. And Ed says, yeah, think of it. Hammer says, I mean, I have to say they're terrific. You're driving around. The man says yes. Hammer says, all over the place dressed as a rapper. You're rapping and you're tracking down these people who you used to hand those giant checks. Oh, I had to. Big checks. and then Hammer says, in the Publishers Clearinghouse, and Ed interrupts him and says, I saw Howie Mandel the other night. He got out of the car. He's got a big check, and he says, I look like Ed McMahon. You know, here he is doing the same thing I was doing. He's got a version of, you know, the new Deal or No Deal, where he's bringing money to the houses. That's what I did, and I gave away $130 million doing that. Now, again, you can read that whole transcript, but he gave away $130 million with giant checks? Really? That's not what history says. And why didn't Ed correct him when the CNN interviewer said Publishers Clearinghouse? Now, the next ones, guys, are, you know, I know that these examples that I'm going to show and talk about can easily be explained away as the writer making a mistake or the actors making a mistake, whatever. But why didn't any of the editors or the actors, directors, producers, etc., catch these glaring errors? Especially when you consider that Ed himself appears in some of these. So check it out.
Hello, this is Rose Nyland. What?
That was
I'm one of the winners of the Publishers Clearinghouse. Ed McMahon wants to see me right away. I should leave my Burt Reynolds ticket on the dresser before I go. Ma, get off the phone.
So, you know, once again, somebody excited about Ed McMahon, but let's check this one out from Roseanne.
That's the scariest costume all night. Who are you supposed to be?
Who am I? I'm Ed McMahon. You won our special Halloween jackpot.
Okay. What is a refrigerator, a poolside dressing room, and Ed McMahon?
A refrigerator, a poolside dressing room, and Ed McMahon.
What is an amana, a cabana, and a famous second banana?
Geeky, cheeky, and downright freaky will return right after this. The global lifestyle accessories brand known for their expandable phone grips, Pop Sockets, has expanded into the phone case category with their newest offering, Pop Case. This multifunctional protective phone case is designed with a slidable grip for adjustable comfort and phone standing preferences. Slide the integrated grip up and down along channels on the sides of the case for an ideal landscape and portrait viewing experience. Available in a range of translucent colors and graphic designs for iPhone 12 and 13 devices, Pop Case elevates the standard phone case to a multi-tool solution that is sleek, durable, and functional. Head over to popsockets.com and use coupon code GeekInsider10 for a 10% discount off of your purchases. That's right. Head over to popsockets.com and use coupon code GeekInsider10 and save.
So, you know, again, not only did the writers put that in, but then Ed goes along with it. Sure, I understand, folks, that could be totally for a paycheck. But let's take a look. Well, let's see here. We got, oh, that's me. We've got some other clips here. And some of these are going to get pretty weird. Because check this out. None other than Snoop Dogg and Don Rickles. Now, this is just a clip. And let me say all this too, folks. These clips and everything, I do not claim any ownership to them. They are snippets that I've taken from other shows that I found on the web. People have sent to me over the years. And so I don't claim any ownership. And I know other people own the copyrights and stuff to all this. And this is a non-monetized channel at this point. So Mickey Mouse, leave me alone if you own any of these. And Snoop, if you're offended, give me a call, brother. We can have some good times together. I got some good herb over here.
And Ed McMahon just was the perfect compliment to him, too, hearing that voice.
Him is a good guy.
I was happy when Ed was passing out that money on them millionaire sweepstakes. He never found his way to my neighborhood.
20 people for dinner?
Yeah, who was all this for?
That was it. It was just a short little clip, but Ed McMahon never made his way to Snoop's neighborhood. Now, I want to take a look at a time when David Letterman visited the Tonight Show. Now, earlier we saw Carson give an oversized check to Letterman on his show. And in this clip, David asked Ed a couple of interesting questions. Check it out.
Have you actually given away any of those $1 million cash prizes? You say,
of them.
where I will personally award this giant prize?
I do it personally.
Does anybody call up and say, no, Ed, just mail it in?
No. They want to see me. They want to see me. If you win, I'll come to your house.
I got one of the mail from him one day.
Is that right?
Oh, yes. Says you may have already won.
And what happened?
Nothing. I didn't win. Didn't win.
It's on the up and up, though.
Oh, I cut that off, but David asked it. It's on the up and up, and Ed says yes. But what the actual AF on that one, folks? He's not only says that he's going to personally, that he's personally delivered for, but that if David wins, he'll personally deliver it. That didn't happen. Now, I'm going to stop here for a second because I want you to understand that I'm not saying that definitively that the Mandela effect is evidence of the Matrix or colliding multiverse, time travel, any of that. I am perfectly understanding and willing to admit that this all could be memory, that these things that I'm showing you could be part of the perpetrators that made thousands of people remember Ed working for PCH. But I'm also open-minded enough to believe that anything could be true at this point, because I've seen a lot of crazy shit, especially in the last 3 years. Stuff that made me think I was losing my damn mind. Stuff that made me think my fiance was losing my mind, and my wife now. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that if we are in a matrix, if we are in a simulation, maybe, just maybe, a lot of these things that I'm pointing out here are glitches in the programming, that they are things that got overlooked by the overriding. And I'm not saying somebody deliberately changed Ed from working from PCH or from working for AFP to PCH. What could have happened, though, and my theory is a butterfly effect. Something else was changed and it caused Ed to work for AFP instead of PCH. But anyway, let's go back to this. Now, in this Letterman clip from 1985, once again, his writers and then David himself overlooked a key problem with one of their jokes.
And finally, the Publishers Clearinghouse people, they give it everywhere. They give away $1 million. The Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. And they conducted a poll, and they distributed little cards to people, and they asked them to tell them why they didn't enter the sweepstakes every year, because they wanted to increase the people participating in it. And they found out the number one reason people don't enter that thing is they say $1 million is not worth the nightmare of meeting Ed McMahon.
And, that's, again, that joke just doesn't make any damn sense. And I always have to go back to the point that if this was American Family Publishers that Ed worked for, why did they keep going with that advertising campaign? If it was you or I that was making the company or making the company's target audience think that it was our direct competitor, we wouldn't even make it a year. But he went on for 9 years. But we've covered a lot of those, and there's a lot more. There's a lot more. And Sabrina the Teenage Witch, season 4, episode 7, Ed is seen presenting a giant check. In Breaking Bad, season 4, episode 8, there's a reference to Ed dropping off checks, which my brother pointed out to me last week after I said what the show was going to be this week. Couldn't find a clip of it because, it's online, or not online. But anyway, Erin Brockovich has a scene where someone knocks on the door and she tells the baby, maybe it's Ed McMahon. And she opens the door to find her boss, who's also named Ed. And she says, wrong Ed. And the Goldbergs. I'm not sure what episode it was. I had a clip. I don't know what happened to it, but Adam tries to explain away some hidden loot by saying that Ed stopped by. And the list goes on and on. Like I said, there, and I'm sure you could probably send me stuff all day long saying that, this was Ed McMahon and giant checks were mentioned in this. And again, I understand that, it's writers, it's directors, it's editors, and then Ed cashing in on a lot of, on jobs. But it just doesn't make a lot of sense that these things haven't been caught or weren't caught at the time. And you're not going to believe some of the stuff that we still have to come, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. We're only about halfway through, really and truly. So stick with me, folks. We'll be right back after this, and we'll continue talking about Ed McMahon, Publishers Clearinghouse, and the damn Mandela effect.
We'll be back right after this break. Cards, the Universe, and Everything is a trading card collecting battle card game that has a little something from everything. From the Old West to outer space and everything in between, Cards, the Universe, and Everything is great for gamers and collectors of all ages. Download it from your app store, and as you collect hundreds of available cards, there are more weekly, so you can craft up to 10 decks and battle against your friends and other players from around the world. And if you're an educator, check out cardstheuniverseandeverything.com for a special offer for you and your students.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. And if you haven't checked out that game yet, you really ought to, because I happen to know that we're going to have some inside codes coming up pretty soon. I still play the game. It's very addicting, so beware. But anyway, the next thing that I wanted to move into is that these mistakes, quote unquote, they're not just limited to commercials, sitcoms, and talk shows that apparently had a lot of people that sucked at their jobs. There's even more. Let's get back up here to the right spot. And this right here, there was, and I missed some of my text, and you can't really read it, but if you zoom in, it's an image there, a before and after kind of thing. The one on the left is showing that a man won $10 million from the clearinghouse or publisher's house. Him on the right is he's running for Congress, I believe it was. And if you look right below the image, at the image itself, though, the one on the left, it says that he's a $10 million winner. And just below it, it says American Family, clearly. But in the credits of the image, it says former Publishers Clearinghouse winner. And then even in the article itself, it says that he's Publishers Clearinghouse winner. And sure, it's a small news site, but even those have editors that check credits to ensure there aren't any issue. And no one from Big's office called to correct the entire second paragraph of the article where he's announcing his congressional aspirations. Or was there just a glitch that only edited the photo and missed the text? Now, here's another interesting tidbit another interesting tidbit is that Biggs, the gentleman, he won't even talk publicly about his win. And then you can get into more publications. Ooh, let me get rid of that. I forget to take stuff off. Let me see. All right. So, sorry, I was reading comments. I get carried away here, guys, and then I forget to read comments, and I have to check every now and then. But in 1997, the Chicago Tribune got it wrong when they ran an article revealing that Ed was writing a book about his time on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. And at one point it says in the article, after years of doling out big checks from Publishers Clearinghouse, Ed McMahon's getting a fat publisher's check himself. Variety says he signed a deal to write about his days with Johnny Carson as the co-host of The Tonight Show. So once again, writer and editor were apparently asleep at the wheel, as the first paragraph gets two major points wrong. That he didn't dole out big checks and he didn't work for Publishers Clearinghouse. Then there's some little oddball things that I found as well. Patty Digg, D-I-G-H. She's a published author and blogger. She has an article that on her website, pattydigg.com, that it dates back to 2006. Now, these are some of the more interesting ones to me, though, folks, these next two, because they're what I call anchor memories. Now, this is where you have memories of something connected to something that are so strong that it stays with you for, ever. And Patty in this blog is describing her family's Super Bowl Sunday routine. That not only was it a day to root for their favorite teams, but her mom would get all dressed up and await Ed McMahon and the Publishers Clearinghouse Prize Patrol. This is what it says on the blog. And a quote directly from the author's mother indicates she has been entering the contest for 35 years. And while she doesn't directly name Ed herself in the article, it's obvious that this is a special memory to Patty and one she emulates herself. She said that, how could I portray you as a nut for dressing up for those 30 years in anticipation of Ed McMahon? And she goes on to admit that she does the same thing herself now, but with the HGTV Dream Home Prize Patrol. And so she's got this really strong anchor memory of mom getting dressed up for Ed McMahon on Super Bowl Sunday. And then there's this next guy who hates direct mail campaigns, particularly Publishers Clearinghouse. And again, the links for a lot of these are in the article on Geek Insider, but I'll warn you now, some of them are broken links. There's missing images. I won't go into saying, I need my tinfoil hat on because they're changing things. But some of them were pretty interesting that they're all of a sudden gone. Now, in this guy's two-part blog entry from 2012, his name is Shel Horowitz, or Horowitz, Horowitz. He goes off on Publishers Clearinghouse and anything direct market. But it's on page 2 that things get interesting. Horowitz significantly calls out PCH's use of celebrities instead of real credibility builders like testimonials. And he says that PCH used the late Ed McMahon for many years. And he puts in there, in fact, I first heard of Ed McMahon through PCH sweepstakes and had to find out later that he was a TV star. And in that blog, he doesn't mention AFP once. And if you go and check it out, you'll see what I mean about him hating direct mail. Now, there's also another one that it appears to be fiction, but I wanted to include this because, again, it seems like it's another strong anchor memory. And the author is writing from, it seems like they're writing from a unique place. It's a book titled Circa 2000, Gay Fiction at the Millennium, and it's by Robert Drake and Terry Wolverton, and it's published by Allison Books. It's an anthology that includes writing by Bernard Cooper, Scott Helm, David Levitt, William J. Mann, and a whole bunch of others. Now, on page 396, which unfortunately Google Books it didn't tell me which author it is on that page, but the writer or the character of the book describes an unexplainable terror of Ed McMahon. And then it goes on to say that they saw a commercial with Ed McMahon walking up to someone's house with a Publishers Clearinghouse envelope and ringing their doorbell. Now, why did the author come up with this phobia if Ed never, not once, walked up to a winner's door? Don't know. Again, could this be that we were all just pushed this way because of stuff on Letterman and Roseanne and all that? I just don't see how it could be. Now, I think we can all agree, we hope that obituaries for ourselves or for our families are correct. That's a pretty important part. It kind of milestones your life. And they're generally one of the last tributes that any of us receives. But when a celebrity dies, their obituaries tend to get published across a wide range of news agencies. And granted, many of these are likely, spin type articles where the writers just quickly grab information from the wire and attempt to get it out as quickly as possible. But once again, in the case of Ed McMahon, we have writers and editors that just totally missed the boat. When Ed passed away in June of 2009, in case after case, they get key parts of his career completely wrong. And apparently, at least from what I can find, not a single one of them ran a correction or a retraction. The New York Post says, "Good night, Ed." And about a third of the way through the paragraph, or in the third paragraph, it says he was a spokesman for Publishers Clearinghouse. National Public Radio called Ed the greatest sidekick of all time, and then immediately said he was doing ads for Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. Variety blew his obituary and said Ed made a killing as a commercial spokesman, Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes, for many years. Business Insider, they said Ed was a pitchman for several products, most notably the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. Another death announcement from a site called Flavor Wire said Ed was the bearer of oversized checks. And in CNN, they did a nice little tribute about his time with Carson and Star Search, which that's something we haven't even mentioned tonight, that he was on Star Search forever. And you know it's coming, though. They said that he also worked for Publishers Clearinghouse. No one from the estate corrected them. None of Ed's famous celebrity friends bothered to set the record straight. And strangely, an article on CNN completely omitted any mention of his sweepstakes pitching days. The LA Times got it correct and named AFP. So did the New York Times and Today, and actually quite a few publications, but not the guys mentioned above, at least not according to the way things are now. Now, it's not all that uncommon for us to hear that government officials got some facts wrong. Unfortunately, but there was a civil case filed back in 2012, and it has an interesting mistake. Again, you can check out the case in its entirety. You can just do a web search, or you can search it on Geek Insider. But on page 6, section 16, in the last sentence, where the United States government, on the record and in a serious court case, says that Ed worked for Publishers Clearinghouse. Then there was a class action lawsuit that was dismissed a couple of years ago, but it caught my eye because, once again, it's no surprise that attorneys across the country tried to draw more people into this class action lawsuit. But their claims against Publishers Clearinghouse seems to be a bit wrong for legal documents. Because in an announcement in May of 2018, Martindale.com, which is a law firm, they went into detail about the lawsuit and how PCH rose to prominence in the 1980s when celebrity Ed McMahon endorsed the sweepstakes and television advertisements portrayed unwitting consumers answering their doorbell to the Publishers Clearinghouse prize patrol, surprising consumers with flowers and ribbons and announcing they had won the sweepstakes. Now, interestingly enough, in the actual class action lawsuit that was filed in April of that year in the Eastern District of New York, just as everyone has done above, they claim that Ed worked for PCH. Now, while I can't find a specific website where this next image came from, it was sent to me and seems to be another attempt at drawing more to the class action lawsuit. But, lo and behold, what do they claim? That Ed McMahon promoted and announced winners for Publishers Clearinghouse. Now, Media Post reported the class action, and though they waited until the end of the article to do so, again, they said PCH is known for iconic TV spots featuring the late Ed McMahon. Now, you'd think that these lawyers would check their facts. I mean, it's rather quite simple these days to see in Ed's bio that he worked for the competitor AFP. And mistakes like this, folks, can get entire cases thrown out. I'm no lawyer, but it seems to me that these sort of things are checked, rechecked, and checked again before filing. Now, None of that happened. How do we have the United States government saying that Ed worked for PCH? We've got these class action lawsuits where they're trying to sue Publishers Clearinghouse that says Ed worked there and even delivered big checks. So how does this make any sense that Ed never worked for Publishers Clearinghouse and never handed out big checks? Well, before we go on, we're just about wrapped up here, folks, but I'm going to play one more quick thing, and then we're going to wrap it up. Probably got about another 10 minutes left, but just stick with me. I don't want to interrupt my next little spiel here, so y'all stay with me.
We'll be back right after this quick break. For Geek Insider advertising opportunities, contact advertising@geekinsider.com. We offer space on the website, in the daily newsletter, sponsored posts, and advertising space on our podcast. For details, contact advertising@geekinsider.com.
Gotta love that music Meredith puts together and these little clips. She puts all these little things together for us. And she's been hella busy, everybody. She's got a new project going, and I'm going to give her a little shout out because it's been kicking some butt, and that is Wild One Forever. It is a women-centric site where tough topics can be discussed in a safe environment. And if you're a woman out there listening, or you've got a woman in your life, you should point them to that website because Meredith's doing one fantastic job over there. They got a lot of exciting interviews coming up, and I help some in the background, but that's Meredith's baby. And I really appreciate all the work she still does for me in her extra time, which I think she sleeps probably like 5 minutes a day. But anyway, so with AFP apparently going through the worst advertising campaign in the history of advertising and doing it for almost 2 decades, I think the Mandela Effect community may want to learn a lesson from their mistake. The term Mandela Effect comes from a single incident of a large group of us remembering watching Nelson Mandela's funeral in the late 80s. I've actually got a whole nother series on this about 1989 because a lot of shit seemed to happen in that year, especially when it ties to the Mandela Effect. You had the Tiananmen Square incident, Tank Man, which never got run over now in this timeline, even though I watched that shit live on the news, saw his blood, but never happened now. Mandela was released from prison, then died a couple of years later, reversed. Nelson Mandela died in prison, saw his funeral, and then he got released a couple of years later. But, while that is a rather significant event in the lives of all of those that experienced it, and it did result in Fiona Broome bringing many of us together, these days the impact of the phenomena has been somewhat diminished. If you go on Reddit, you go on YouTube, you just search in Mandela Effect, you're going to find a ton of claims that certain things are Mandela effects, from the color of the sky to obscure song lyrics. True effects seem to have less of an impact. Now, when I say obscure song lyrics, I don't mean Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll, because I don't care what you say. The opening lyrics were of I saw him blank there by the record machine. Think of it in your head. I saw him blank there by the record machine. What did she sing? What did you sing? Well, I would swear up and down, and everyone I've talked to swore that it was Standing. But go listen to the song now and watch the video and ask yourself how in the world you ever made that mistake, because it's clear she ain't saying Standing. But perhaps we should consider attempting to rebrand the Mandela Effect to the McMahon Effect. It's got a nice ring to it. There's a ton of this, what a lot of people like to call residue, showing that many people, including apparently Ed himself and Johnny and David Letterman, they seem to remember events quite a bit differently than what we're being told how they actually occurred. Now, I'm kidding, of course. There's no way we're going to rebrand it, and McMahon Effect just sounds like we're talking football or something. But if we did change the name, it would be able to cover skeptics as well, giving them the ability to say, like I've been saying earlier, that all of these Ed events are what attributed to our collective, quote unquote, false memories of him with PCH to begin with. A case of life imitating art. Well, with everything that I've seen, I think it might be the exact opposite, that it's art imitating life that not everybody remembers. So what did we learn from all of this today? Well, or at least I can say, what did I learn from it? Ed McMahon worked for a company for 15 years called American Family Publishers. Even though he said many, many times over many years, that he would personally award the winners, he never did. For that entire span of time and even decades afterwards, pretty much the whole world confused American Family Publishers, their spokesperson, and their expensive advertising campaign for those of their main competitor, making them the absolute worst marketers and advertisers in the history of the world. Yet nobody ever mentions that fact. While Publishers Clearinghouse and had the prize patrol and did in fact surprise winners at home with oversized checks, there was no celebrity involved and no evidence can be found of AFP arriving at winners' homes at all. In fact, searching for American Family Publishers winner on YouTube, it only brings up PCH commercials with, of course, winners being surprised with oversized checks. Now, numerous screenwriters, editors, fact checkers, and producers suck at their jobs. I'm an editor for here at Geek Insider, and if I made the mistakes that these guys have made, I wouldn't still be in this position. I've been at Geek Insider for 3 years as a writer, took over managing editor about 8 months ago. And if I let these sort of mistakes go on all the time, I guarantee you the owner wouldn't keep me around. Another thing we learned is that Ed can't rap worth a shit, and apparently he will take money for just about anything. Now, Publishers Clearinghouse these days does send out celebrities. When I wrote this a year ago, Steve Harvey had just started announced that he was starting to go out with the prize patrol. And so all of this that I've looked in today and over the years, did it change my views on Ed and Publishers Clearinghouse and the Mandela effect, or the Mandela effect as a whole? No, because I think it more than strengthened it. Yes, I still think it's possible that all of this attributed to my memory of Ed working for PCH. I think that's possible. Do I think it's plausible? No, because that means that all of these thousands of people across the country and around the world would have had to have seen the exact same things that I see over the years in order to get that formulated in their head. And then, I do understand that the Ed helped perpetuate the lie or the mistake. Television writers, movies, movies with Aaron Brockovich, and there's others. They all helped us to, misunderstand, so to speak. But I also firmly believe, and you can call me crazy if you want, but I think there's a possibility that, as I said a couple of weeks ago, or whenever the hell it was, about us living in a simulation, that we could be in a simulation. And if so, these kind of things are what we would see. And, why do so few people, if any, that are affected by this effect, they don't recall American Family Publishers at all? In fact, most people that you talk to that aren't even familiar with the Mandela effect, if you ask them who is the ones that had the sweepstakes, they're going to tell you Publishers Clearinghouse. And I have yet to find one that can tell me American Family Publishers. So how did the whole idea of Ed handing out the checks get started? If PCH was the only one with a prize patrol and the oversized checks, but didn't use any celebrities, why do thousands of people associate Ed with arriving at the door with those checks? You can't find a single piece of evidence of Ed ever knocking on a winner's door. So why do so many television shows, movies, blogs, books all portray this as being funny? The fucking joke is bullshit. It makes no sense. And pardon my French, folks, but it just doesn't make any sense for this joke. Why did AFP keep using a spokesperson who was giving free advertising to their main competitor? Why didn't Ed correct people when presented with incorrect history? To me, everyone, this is one of the most compelling Mandela effects, if not the most compelling. I hope you enjoyed the trip down the rabbit hole with me. If you do come across any Ed McMahon and Publishers Clearinghouse examples that I missed, comment on wherever you're hearing this at, or shoot me an email at matthew@geekinsider.com. I try to stay away from the Mandela effect as far as my writing has gone over the last few months, just because it is such a deep rabbit hole. And I'm OCD, man. It can really suck you in. So I will say that with a grain of salt. If you are new to the Mandela effect, if this is the first time that you've ever looked up, Ed McMahon and the PCH, and you come across this video and you're going, what the actual F? I know he worked there. Well, be careful going and looking this stuff up about the Mandela effect, because it can be mind-blowing. There is tons and tons of things that just melt my brain, so to speak. But again, I hope you enjoyed it, because no matter what, whether you believe it's all confabulation and memory issues, or you think something much deeper is going on, the Mandela effect is real. And the fact remains that there are hundreds upon hundreds of these things these days that just don't seem to fit well-established memories of countless people. And like I said earlier, in the last few years, folks, I've seen things that have rocked me to my very core. And while I've personally discounted numerous Mandela effects, matter of fact, my wife and I discount the mass majority of them. We talk them out. We discuss them. We discuss our memories. Like my brother, my wife, and I discussed the Jiffy peanut butter. And we decided that we thought it was Jiffy peanut butter because of Skippy peanut butter, Jiffy brand popcorn, and Jiffy cornbread, not to mention whatever else in our young brains. And so we discounted that one. And the list goes on and on. The ones that I mark off. Now, do I discount other people's anchor memories for those? Of course not, because hell, for all I know, we are slipping through multiverse, and it's different for everybody at different times. But I have a strong enough connection to this one and to many others that about it, every four or five I dismiss, there's one that comes slamming home hard. And this was one of the first, and it's still one of the best for me. And I know that a lot of these videos and stuff, folks, were probably stuff that has been, or not probably, it was stuff that was put together by other people. And I don't have all the information on that. This, again, is stuff that has been given to me over the years. And so I'm not sure, but thank you. Again, I don't take credit for any of this stuff. I didn't put any of it to the videos together, but I wanted to share it with you because I personally find it extraordinarily interesting and extraordinarily geeky and downright freaky. It may not, somewhat cheeky too, because it's kind of in our face. But anyway, that's going to do it. This show went double tonight, and I knew it would. I was putting all this together. I messaged Meredith, and I was like, holy crap, tonight's show is going to be about an hour. And I was right. We're closing in on the hour. Make sure you tune in every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central. That's for the episode of Geeky, Cheeky, and Downright Freaky. We do this live on my Facebook for my family and friends. We do it on Geek Insider's Facebook as well as our YouTube. Make sure you like us, subscribe, follow us. I'm telling you, there's a lot of cool stuff coming. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks so much for joining in. We will see you next week. Take care.